Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta, no matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be. Thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. An impromptu show in some ways, this 6 o'clock hour. So those listening on replay, hope you enjoy the show, and those listening on our audio platform, same to you, and those on replay as well. So listen, guys, yesterday's show was titled Dare to Win from the Dare to Doers. They did nothing as expected. So let's start planning ahead, shall we? Let's rock and roll with two incredible guests. Here we go.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hello, squaddies. Welcome back to Squad Central. At ease, everybody. I'm joined by two amazing guests, two of my favourite broadcasters in football today and sports in general. You know them. They've been on the show before. Harriet Prior, sports broadcaster for Sky Sports. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back. It's been a while since we've spoken. Happy to be here.
It has. And Kweku Afari, who you guys have seen on the show before, does stuff for ESPN FC, Talk Sports, Sky Sports during the transfer season and lots more. Kweku, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sophie.
Thank you for being here. And thank you, squaddies, for joining. So listen, there's a lot to get through. We've got Harriet for half hour and then Kweku staying on for 10 minutes of added time. Speaking of added time, we've seen a lot of that this season. And there's breaking news from David Ornstwin. I was going to start the show differently. But David Ornstwin has just broken a story. Premier League clubs to vote on banning VAR for next season. Harriet, I'm going to start with you. You've stood on the sidelines doing a lot of reporting for Sky Sports this season. Fans are always arguing the same arguments we used to have in the pub without VAR. What is your take on this? What do you know?
So I've done a lot of my kind of pitch side reporting in the Championship this season. And one of my favourite things is that you don't have to think about VAR. And you can kind of feel that in the grounds, that when a goal happens and there's no offside flag or the referee hasn't straight away ruled it out, it's just a moment of real celebration. And that is the one thing I think, if you're talking purely from a fan perspective, that you just lose with VAR. You just don't know if you can ever fully celebrate and ever fully commit to celebrating, because there's just so many reasons why a goal could be rolled out now. And for me, it comes down to the thing that people keep repeating, is it's meant to be for things that are clear and obvious, but it's just blurred the lines even more between what we thought we knew about football and like what we don't know. And I think that if it was abolished, we'd miss it in moments. And I think that probably won't be a particularly popular opinion, but there are times where it is an outrage when there is no VAR, that goals are given when it is so blatant and obvious. And those are the moments that VAR should be able to intervene, and they should be able to have a say to make the game more fair. But at the moment, it just feels like it's causing more harm than good. And there are still so many errors with it, errors that it was brought in to rule out. So has it made the game any better? Has it meant that there's any less errors? Not really. And so is there any need for it when it's just really harming the viewer and fan experience?
Harriet brings up a great point of the Championship and not even having to focus on that, let alone as a fan and as a reporter as well. Kweku, you're a Chelsea fan. We've all kind of benefited from VAR this season and not. What's your stance on this one?
So it's interesting. I was very pro VAR before it was brought in, like a lot of people. But as we've seen it been implemented over the last few years, football operates in the grey area, right? It's not definitive. There's situations that everybody could look at multiple times and have different opinions on it. And that's the beauty of football. And part of football as well is the discourse between the games, the narratives that are pushed. And we thought VAR was brought in to get rid of that, or get rid of the ambiguity when it comes to those decisions. But it's not. It's, if anything, it's increased it. It's caused more distraction and caused more conversations that surround VAR as opposed to the actual game itself. And so it'll be interesting to see how this vote goes. It was interesting that Wolves were the team that proposed the idea.
Yeah.
It has to get 14 out of 20 votes. And there's been so many incidents this season. Harriet can remember the Spurs Liverpool game where Liverpool had a perfectly good goal ruled out and VAR should have intervened. Or we heard the VAR recordings and somebody did try to intervene, but they were overruled. We've seen the Arsenal, you've had it yourself, Sophie, in terms of the Newcastle game. We've seen Nottingham Forest write strongly worded tweets. A lot of teams have had issues with VAR this season. And we have to also take a look at the officiating in this country, which is not up to scratch. But the technology that's been implemented to try and get rid of these controversial decisions just hasn't worked. So I'm not surprised to see teams maybe trying to phase it out just because it's taken away the purity of the game. Goals are to be celebrated in moments, and every time your team scores a goal, you're now waiting for a VAR check to actually confirm it. I don't think that aligns with what football actually is. Yeah,
you're so right. It's making it like an exact science when it is not there to be enjoyed as an exact science. It's there to be kind of swept away in those moments. And it does take that from you. Like, I celebrate as a fan differently because you don't want the away end in 2 minutes time to be like taking the piss out of you, do you? Because it's gone offside and it's like by a millimeter line. That wasn't even why the offside rule was implemented in the first place, to catch people out on millimeters. It just feels so counterproductive to the enjoyment that fans are meant to have and the experience of watching football as a fan. What do you think? Sorry.
And I mean, I think that it's worked well and it hasn't. And now they've introduced it. How do you take it back? And if we go to next season and there's these massive moments and there's no VAR, what then? I just feel like Pandora's box has been opened, and to shut it is going to be really tricky. And it will be, like Kweku said, really interesting to see how teams vote on this. The thing I have the issue with in particular is the rules of football, I think, have also affected VAR, right? So what is a handball these days? What is even an offside as well? We're drawing lines and we're deciding offside by like a nail, or a hair's breadth. And I think that the technology was a good idea. It works well in tennis. In general, I cover MLS here as well. It works really well. The referees now are kind of telling fans what's going on in terms of the decision that they've made. It feels more inclusive for the fans in the stadium. So I'm not sure the Premier League has perfected the technology, and to take it away at this point might be a difficult task. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And the way it's been implemented is the issue. When you're seeing officials drawing lines on the screen as if it's Microsoft Paint, it just seems very, very basic. And I can understand why some fans are frustrated when it comes to VAR. And in football, the phrase of swings and roundabouts, decisions will eventually come back your way. And with VAR, teams feel aggrieved. We saw how aggrieved Nottingham Forest felt in that Everton game where Ashley Young probably should have given away 2 or 3 penalties. And it's leading to dissent amongst football clubs, and leading to football clubs doing things that are out of character. We shouldn't be seeing football clubs right into the PGMOL in terms of problems they've got with officiating in this country. And so for me, anything that takes football away from its grassroots foundations in terms of people trying to put the ball in the back of the net, then I think it's a bad thing. And that's what VAR has actually done. And so for me, if I see it go next season, I wouldn't be a crying shame because I don't think it's worked so far.
Can I just say, a couple of people have made the really good point, which seems obvious enough, but that it's not the actual technology that's the problem, is it? It's the people that are controlling the technology. It's the use of the technology at the moment. The technology itself is not flawed. It's the application of it that needs to be fixed. And when you hear those recordings back, which they've, I suppose, tried to give us more of an insight into this season, you can understand why there is problems, because there's so many voices, there's so many opinions. There doesn't seem to be a really thought out strategy of this is how we're going to get to the right decision. I think they've tried to work on that, and you kind of you know why when you hear back the audio from that Liverpool goal in that Spurs game, which was disallowed. But another thing, and I will sort of go on about it after this, is the experience as a fan in the stadium is shocking. You get no communication over what is going on, and it can be, we've seen it take like 5 minutes for a decision to be made, and you are just sat in the stadium and you can get more off of Twitter as a gauge of what's going on than you actually can in the stadium. So if it does stay, the application but also the fan experience of it for people that are there needs to be massively improved.
Yeah, totally. And they started a few weeks ago in MLS for the referee to kind of, he's mic'd up now and is telling fans what's going on. And one thing that also really shocks me about the Premier League is the lack of making the referee go to the monitor and allowing the referee to referee the game. And here that happens a lot. And 99 out of 100 times, you really do get the right decision. And the onus is mostly put on the referee versus people drawing lines and doing all this type of stuff. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, we've seen in terms of VAR being digestible, or technology in football being digestible. If you see it in the Champions League, the semi-automated VAR in terms of when it comes to offsides, people accept it because it seems like the technology is on point. So I do slightly disagree with you, Harriet, in terms of the technology not being an issue. You can't measure the frames per second when it comes to offsides. So it does seem like somebody's pressing pause at a certain point and deciding when the ball's left at a player's foot to when the player's offside or not. And a lot of times, even looking at it multiple times, we don't believe they come to the correct decision. It's happened a few times. And so I think that can be refined if it's here to stay, because when it comes to goal line technology, nobody's got an issue with it. Apart from that, I think it was Bournemouth Aston Villa game a few years ago where it didn't go off. It's been seamless because we believe in the technology. In tennis, they believe in the technology. With VAR, I think people, because we are seeing officials drawing on lines manually, people don't believe in the technology and don't believe in the officials. So there's a huge issue there. Just interesting to see that next season we might not have something that's been so fundamental and integral to the game over the last 4 years.
Yeah, very good points. Okay, awesome stuff. Had to throw that one in. Breaking news from David Ornstein there on VAR. Let's see how that shakes out. Right. I have to get this. I need your take on this one, guys, because you two very honest with your opinions. Last night we saw Tottenham play at home against Manchester City. Now we all have rival clubs, and there's no love lost between Tottenham and Arsenal, whether it's Liverpool and Everton, Chelsea and other London clubs, Kweku. I want to know, Harry, I'll start with you. Put yourself in Tottenham's shoes. If that's Everton, Liverpool, what was your overall take of the behavior, the lack of atmosphere, Ange having to come out? Like, it felt like, Jon Snow in the Battle of the Bastards, just standing there on his own with the sword, in front of this army coming towards him. His honesty after the match, saying things that Mourinho and Conte have been vilified for. Harriet, what was your take on the whole thing? And as a Liverpool fan, how would you have felt if that was Everton? And what would you have thought of your fans if they'd done the same thing?
Yeah, so I'm not going to sit on the fence, but I am first of all going to say, I kind of understand. Okay, so if you're Ange Postecoglou, you are a professional. It is your job to manage that football team and to get that football team to win games. He is not coming at it at all from a perspective of, as a fan, wanting another team, the permutations if they win and that impact on another team in the league. That's just not his job. His job is to make sure that his football team on the pitch is performing as well as possible. And that means for him putting out what would have been a huge statement win against Manchester City. So for him, he cannot understand why his fans would not be behind that. And actually remember as well, just how fragile it is as a football manager to be in that position. And we've seen so many times how easy it is to lose your job as a football manager, even in weeks or 2-week periods when things have not gone to plan and things have not been going to plan for Tottenham. So I get that frustration from him. Rivalry is a funny thing as a fan, isn't it? If you're a Tottenham fan in that stadium thinking, okay, we haven't got that much to play for. I know Champions League was still a bit on the line, but it would have to have taken a massive goal swing. There's other permutations to it. I sympathise with it, but I do still think I would find it really hard to not support my team in that moment, because you're in the atmosphere, you're watching the game in front of you, you're not thinking about Arsenal. But then if it was Everton in that situation, I don't know, maybe I'd feel differently. But as an outsider looking in, I can't fathom why. I can fathom it, but I can't understand why fans would have tried to create a bit of a dimmed atmosphere and make it a bit strange and celebrate Manchester City winning in that way. But then I get why they absolutely do not want Arsenal to win the league. But I do, I sympathise with Ange. That's kind of my main point, because I do feel for him in that he didn't feel he had his fans backing, and that's hard.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think a Liverpool friend of mine, brought up the Blackburn, when the year Blackburn won. And I think United You guys had to play Blackburn. United could have won their game, but Liverpool ended up getting a result. You got behind the team. You supported your team. Kweku, they're doing the Poznan in their own stadium. They still have. It's like Arsenal know that the league is really lost, but they're still fighting for every inch in every game, for every point. They still had an opportunity to qualify for the Champions League. Aston Villa's last game is against Crystal Palace, who are on absolute fire towards the end of this season. What is your take on this as a Chelsea fan as well?
So I'm similar to Harry. I understand it from both parties' point of view. There is an element of sanctimony from Arsenal fans online in terms of their finger pointing at Spurs, because say Spurs would have beaten City, would have taken points off of City, Arsenal fans have been laughing at Spurs, being that's the most Spursy thing to do, to hand us the title. And now that Spurs have lost, it's a case of, oh my God, you've given City the title. So damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're a Spurs fan, really. And I can understand why Arsenal fans are annoyed, because they fought so hard, and Arsenal have been one of the best runners-up in Premier League history. Obviously, that Liverpool team that got to 97 points can never be compared to, because it was an incredible feat in 2019. But this Arsenal team have been near perfect in 2024, and looks like they're not going to win the league title. But I can get where Spurs fans are coming from, because football essentially is tribal, and Spurs have seen Arsenal win the league at White Hart Lane. Spurs have always been the punching bag in North twice. I've been the punching bag in North London, and so for them to see Arsenal win the Premier League for the first time in 20 years would break Spurs fans' heart. And I do think the stakes were lowered. Say Liverpool would have done their job and beaten Aston Villa on Monday Night Football, and then Spurs will have a realistic chance of finishing in the top four, because they take on Sheffield United on the final day. They're probably going to spank them. And like you mentioned, so Villa take on
Palace
on the final day of the season. And so it's a difficult position for Spurs to be in, but I think Ange has taken the right stance. I think as a manager that's trying to win as many games as possible and trying to finish as high up in the league as possible, you need to take that stance. And he was very strong when he came out in his press conference and says there's a lot of things that need to change at the football club, because effectively that's a loser's mentality. You go into that stadium hoping that your team lose, and that's a fundamental problem. His goal is to get Spurs to a position where they're fighting for so much that they can't afford to lose games towards the back end of the season. But I can see it from both teams' point of view, because it's a difficult position to be in.
Yeah. Ange is, Harriet, we've seen lots of managers come out with his press conferences of late have seemed a little blue. It's like when Antonio Conte realized the reality of what Spurs are as a club in terms of behind the scenes, the light went out, right? And he sounded a little down and blue and whatever. But I think he won the respect of a lot of fans last night by saying, listen, if you want anything to change at this club, you've got to change the entire culture and mentality. Some Arsenal fans, some Tottenham fans have turned on him big time. And when you see someone like, Kweku, I don't know, but Jamie O'Hara wearing a Manchester City shirt on TalkSport last night. I mean, just craziness. But nonsense. Should Ange dump Tottenham, Harriet? Has he realised what's your take on Ange's stuff after the game?
Well, refer back to my fragility comment earlier, because think back to the start of the season when Tottenham fans were just absolutely raving that they've got the most incredible manager that's going to be able to lead them to trophies and a title. And I actually do think there has been significant signs of progress under Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham, and granted, results in the last few weeks haven't gone their way. And also, I take the point that I do think at times the adaptability in his game plan hasn't quite been there. He's really stuck to a system, even at times when it's just clearly not worked. I think there's certain teams you cannot play a high line against and play that attacking style of football and not expect to concede a fair few number of goals because of that style of play. So I take that, but I do still think you've got to give him a fair amount of grace time to get used to things, to build his own team. It wasn't easy for him in a summer where he lost pretty late on his key goal scorer in Harry Kane. Has done pretty well under the circumstances, I think, with the team he has. Yes, they're missing out on Champions League football, but I do still think the foundations are there for him as a manager to do well there. But he does need the buy-in from everyone. He needs the buy-in from the fans. He needs the buy-in from the board. He needs to be able to go into a summer and say, this is my plan, this is what I need, this is how I want to play, and these are the players that suit it. But I'm really reluctant to get sucked into this culture of we just need to go to the next as soon as things aren't working, because I don't think that stable, successful football teams in the long term are built on foundations like that.
Yeah, totally agree. And, for us, drawing against, the Fulham games, the West Ham game at home, that 2-0 was just so painful. Could have been 3-0 if Raya hadn't saved a penalty. And then losing at home to Aston Villa, granted, they're a really good side. And everyone's going to look to that. People will look to, there's games City lost, there's games we lost. And sometimes, if anyone knows, as a Liverpool fan, losing out to Manchester City brutally for, a couple seasons, they're just a juggernaut. So let me ask you guys, which team do you think Liverpool are going to be in a transition, right? They still have a foundation and a backbone there. Klopp has run the club really well. Things behind the scenes look healthy. Kweku, Chelsea have been on an amazing run. It seems to be coming together with Poch. They have an abundance of talent. Which of the teams that have struggled this season in particular do you think will rise next season and be challenging, if for the title, but definitely top four?
I think there'll only be two title challenges next season. That's Man City and Arsenal. They're the two most complete teams in the league. They were that at the beginning of this season. Arsenal finishing second last year and adding a £100 million midfielder and getting even better. I think Arsenal will go again in the summer and bring in a striker to really complete that front line, despite the fact that Kai Havertz has done a very good job leading the line on occasion this season. And Man City are going to be there no matter what, unless something happens with 115 charges. But in terms of teams that have struggled this season, I'm biased. I'm going to say Chelsea. I've seen good things towards the back end of this season, and I feel vindicated. As a Chelsea fan, I've had a short leash with some managers. Managers that I've not necessarily agreed to the style of football. I think back to the Sarri season, 18-19. He did win a European trophy. We did finish third. We got to the final of the League Cup, but I was done with him. I wasn't enjoying watching Chelsea. This season's been different. We've had to contend and deal with injuries, which I don't think's been. We've not made too much of it as Chelsea fans because we expect to deliver despite injuries, and everybody's had injuries this season. But towards the back end of the season, getting a win against Spurs, the Spurs team that was still chasing Champions League football, the strong result against West Ham, putting 5 past them, putting 6 past Everton. I'm starting to see the semblances of good football at Chelsea. The buzzword among Chelsea fans is inverted. We're seeing an inverted fullbacks. That's what Arsenal been doing. That's what Liverpool been doing. That's what Man City have been doing for years. And I'm starting to see that progressive style of football at Chelsea now that we're getting players fit again. And so I'm excited to see how Chelsea get on next season. It's about stability though. It's about Poch being backed by the board. Both spent billions and Chelsea have gone backwards, but I think we're now on the right track where everyone in the club is aligned, and hopefully next season we can challenge for those top 4 places, because I think we've got the players to do it, and I definitely think we've got the managers to do it too.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny what's kind of been happening there, and Pochettino slowly getting it together. One of the things I find really funny as well, Harriet, is, a lot of Arsenal fans scream, give Arteta time, and he's been given the luxury of time. Our owners have given him that. United fans screaming about Ten Hag. Yes, they've been terrible in the Premier League, but he's got them to 4 finals. They've won a cup. They have another opportunity to win a cup. Pochettino has inherited a squad mostly of players that, and Kweku can correct me, that were purchased, and maybe he didn't have a say in all of it. Aston Villa, what Emery's done there this season is incredible, considering they were in a relegation battle with Steven Gerrard last season. Newcastle, a little bit different, I think, of all of them. You don't quite know what's going to happen from the financial point of view, what they can invest, what they can't. Is Bruno going to stay? Is Isak going to stay? What is your take as well with Liverpool too, with a new manager coming in? You've had all these wonderful moments under Klopp. How do you see things going next season?
Oh, it's going to be a really interesting situation, because I just think it's a huge one of unknown. It's such an unknown entity because it's a relatively unknown manager with an unknown group of players, because who knows which key figures might leave in summer, which contracts might be renewed. There is still massive clouds hanging over a few contract situations. Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of them. Virgil van Dijk is another one of them. Not for this summer, but for the year after. But you think the club wouldn't want to keep them where they could lose them on a free, particularly not Trent, whose market value is really high. So I feel like there is so much work to do. I think one thing that has given Liverpool fans encouragement is the fact that there has been a lot of like firming up of the kind of team behind the scenes, if that makes sense. So there's been a really good structure put in place. The foundations have been put in place in terms of the transfer team, in terms of, you know, bringing back in Michael Edwards and a few different things, which I think has given Liverpool fans a bit of confidence that the stability and the foundation will still be there. But on the pitch, who knows? Because who knows how this manager is going to want to play? Who knows how long that is going to take to implement? Who knows if he'll play in a similar style to Klopp? I think that is one of the major reasons he's been looked at as a target, because he does set up and play stylistically in a similar way to Klopp. But no one is Jurgen Klopp, and I don't think anyone can like punch above his weight with the squad that he's had as much as he's been able to. But it's going to be interesting.
You're not confident. You're not confident.
I sense trepidation.
No, I don't feel that. I don't know if I feel unconfident, but I feel like it might be a bit of a ride and we're just going to have to strap ourselves in for a season or two, and that's okay. Can I touch really quickly on not title teams, but teams who I just really think will be interesting next year?
Yes, please.
Because Crystal Palace is one for me, because like I just really think that if they manage to kind of keep some of their key players and some of their talented players they've got coming through, firstly at the club and secondly fit and available, I think they'll be real, not obviously title contenders or anything like that, but real contenders for moving a lot higher up the table than they are this season. I think they're 12. Let me have a look at the table. Yeah, they're 12th this season at the moment. They've really impressed me. I've been really impressed with them. I think Wolves are another one who are a bit of like I feel like they've made big steps. I don't know what they can do to kind of take them to that next level, but I at times have been really impressed with them. But I just feel like there's so many teams that are going to be unknown entities. Liverpool's definitely one of them. What state are Chelsea going to be in? Who's Man United's manager going to be? Bournemouth have been doing really well as well. I really like them and their setup under their manager. I feel like it's going to be such a good year, particularly for the neutrals. Hopefully for Liverpool fans, maybe not.
You know, as speaking from experience, replacing the Arsenal thing is a little strange because Wenger wasn't great towards the end. And as grateful as we are and as legendary as he is for the club, it was time for him to go. Manchester United, I think, is the better example. Sir Alex Ferguson could have probably gone on for 5 more years and still won titles. And seeing what's happened to United, the fact that they haven't won, is it 10 years now since he's retired? I don't think anyone would have taken that bet that United would have fallen this far in the Premier League. Emery had the horrible task still of replacing a legendary manager like Wenger, despite the fact that he had fallen in the Premier League from winning titles. It's going to be the manager coming in to replace Klopp. That is a tough task. Not only from a production point of view, winning trophies, the likability factor, the connection with the fans, the city, everything. Kweku, Chelsea, sorry, mate. The revolving door managers gave you trophy after trophy. You don't have that connection and sentiment. Maybe Mourinho is the closest to that. Maybe Ancelotti could have been that. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those seasons where maybe, again, we're seeing 3 different Premier League tables. That top part, all of these teams emerging in the middle, and then those struggling at the bottom. Kweku.
Yeah, it's interesting with replacing the manager because it's very rare that you get a Shankly-Paisley situation where you just have succession when it comes to managers that carry on winning trophies or continue the tradition of the football club. And modern football clubs are normally built in the image of a manager. So Alex Ferguson or Manchester United were built in the image of Fergie. Arsenal or modern Arsenal were built in the image of Arsene Wenger. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Pep Guardiola eventually leaves Man City and how successful they will be. But I feel like this modern Liverpool side or team was built in the image of Jurgen Klopp. And you never want to be the man after the man. You want to be the man after the man after the man. You want to be the guy who takes over from the job or takes over the job after another person's come in and been unsuccessful. And so Arne Slot, it remains to be seen. But what Harriet mentioned in terms of building a strong foundation is imperative, because if Slot isn't the man, then at least you've got a team surrounding him to go again and bring somebody else in who may be the right fit for the job. But Liverpool, an interesting one, because they knew, Jurgen Klopp, when he was doing an exit interview, said that he knew in the summer that he wasn't going to be here next season. And so Liverpool would have known that. And hopefully they knew that for their sake when it went to targeting players and bringing players in. And hopefully the players that they did bring in are malleable enough to work under a different manager in a different system. They look like they are. I really like McAllister. I really like Szoboszlai. I think Gravenberch's got a high ceiling despite struggles this season. I think Liverpool's issue is the front line. Will Mo Salah be there next season? Trent Alexander-Arnold's entering the last year of his contract. We all remember Virgil van Dijk's comments straight after Klopp said that he was leaving. And so, I saw Harriet laughing there.
He rectified that, though, I think. He said...
I was laughing because he felt terrible and then rectified it the first available possibility.
Yeah.
He did, but he said what was on his heart and what was on his mind. I think he was probably encouraged to rectify that. So we'll see what happens with Virgil van Dijk, who's been incredible for Liverpool this season. So there's a lot of question marks about Liverpool, and I think it's going to be a rebuilding season. But in terms of the Premier League narratives, I really like the Crystal Palace one. I like Adam Wilson. I really like Eze Elise. They've increased their value tenfold after that 4-0 drum in the Man United on Monday Night Football. And Mateta looks like one of the best strikers in the world right now. And so there's narratives galore going into the 24-25 season. I just think the top two teams will be the top two teams again. Arsenal and Man City are just a different level when it comes to Premier League sides.
I hope so. I did a show with Arsenal's midfielder, came up with Kev in the academy and stuff, David Hillier, and he said, he fears for Arsenal next season a little bit to have come so close 2 seasons in a row, to go at it again a third season, might be tough. And I think for us, finding that Declan Rice up front is going to be key. That would elevate the team again. How do you elevate? How do you keep the momentum going and the competitiveness going? And I know that some Arsenal fans might be a bit concerned about that if we don't invest in a striker this season. Speaking of Arsenal, and I know, Harriet, you're going to have to duck out in a little bit here. I want to get your take, because we finally have a team, and I love always hearing the outsider perspective on our club. We've got a team that we love and have fallen in love with. We used to have a team, that was apathetic, and now we're confused as to which player's name to get on the back of the shirt. If there was an Arsenal player you could sign tomorrow at your club, I'll give you a couple. Who would you take, Harriet?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love Odegaard. So I think that he is just like, for me, I don't know if you're going to ask us player of the seasons, but he would be like a strong top 2 contender, because I just think he's like magic. And I love watching him, because I think, how old is he? He's still relatively young, isn't he? Like mid-20s?
Yeah, mid-20s.
I feel like not just his like personality on the pitch, but I really like the leadership qualities he shows. The fact that he can just like create something out of nothing. I like that about him a lot. But then if I'm thinking of the future, and as Kweku mentioned, like the forward line and Salah leaving and all that kind of things, then Saka would be like an obvious choice, wouldn't he? Because which team does he not elevate by being in it? And which team can he not be like the star man in? So yeah, one of those two. A lot of young talent though at Arsenal, isn't there? A lot of young talent.
Yeah, there is. It's really exciting. And I agree with you, because my next question was going to be, who's your player of the year? But I mean, Odegaard's been sensational. Kweku, everyone laughed at us when we took Havertz and Jorginho, but I don't care what anyone says. Havertz has been a brilliant signing, and Jorginho has helped in some major moments, especially in the absence of Thomas Partey for most of the season. If the roles were reversed, who would you like at Stamford Bridge?
Could I take all 11? You've just got such and I'm so envious of your 11. You've got such a great team. If I look at William Saliba, what a centre-back. Gabriel's really come to the fore this season in terms of being that strong partner and being the bad cop to Saliba's good cop. Martin Odegaard is a player similar to Harriet. He's my favourite non-Chelsea player to watch. He's absolutely incredible. Like you said, Harriet, he's magic on the ball. And I tweeted, I think it was this time last year, he's a top 10 player in the world. I think you can revise that to top 5. I do think the sky's the limit. He's such a good player. Bukayo Saka, the star boy, everybody knows about how good he is. So it's difficult to make a choice. But for me, as a Chelsea fan, it still hurts my heart that we weren't in the position to bring in Declan Rice. A Chelsea fan, a man that could have come in and been the captain straight away. We see how transformative he's been for Arsenal this season, and he would have elevated Chelsea in the position where we are still a little bit weak despite spending 200 million on two players in Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. I think Declan Rice adds something a little bit different, and we've seen a transformation of Declan Rice. He's no longer a sitter. He plays on the left side of that midfield, that left side of 8, who's got a bit more freedom to get up and down. And he's just such a good player. And he elevates the team in terms of his mentality, in terms of his desire, as well as quality. And I saw it firsthand when Chelsea played against Arsenal at Stamford Bridge earlier this season. Chelsea playing brilliantly, 2-0 up against you lot. And then Declan Rice, I saw Odegaard fold in that game, essentially. He came off a sub, but Declan Rice, his will would not be broken, and he dragged the team back into the game. He scored the first goal, and somebody like that in your side, I think just changes absolutely everything, and he's the player I would bring in from Arsenal to Chelsea.
Can I make
Harriet?
a comment? I'm reading the comments, and someone's put that I fancy Odegaard, and I just want to say I can have an appreciation of a footballer without fancying them. It's okay. We can
Who
just
said
like
that?
I don't know. I can't even find it now. I just saw it as it came out.
Our audience don't ever behave that way, so there must be there must be a.
I'm really joking. I don't care. I just found it funny.
I care, and the squaddies care too, and the squaddies all let Newman. I knew it would be you, and here's the scoop. For that, you get a red card, all right, and you are on a timeout. Now, there you go. Right. See you, Newman. I knew he's the only one. And a lot of the squaddies question if he's even an Arsenal fan. So there you have it. So anytime I can give him a red card, I appreciate it. All right, Harriet, do you have to duck out?
It's okay. I've got 5. All good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Declan Rice then the signing of the season? I know there was an argument for McAllister a few weeks ago. You know, Cole Palmer has been incredible. Where do you guys stand? Harriet, start with you on who you think has been the signing of the season.
It's hard because how do you judge it? Because for me, you can be the signing of the season, but if your team hasn't performed at a particularly high level or is not like really competing for anything, i.e. Cole Palmer, who I think is a sensational footballer, can you be like the signing of the season? Or like you can in my eyes, but then the team around him hasn't been able to elevate him and work to his standards. Is that fair enough, Kweku? Like they've not, they're not good enough for Cole Palmer at the moment.
Okay, so then if we're working within those parameters, then the only teams that can have a signing of the season are Man City and Arsenal. Then,
yeah, exactly. I don't know if that's right. I'm just kind of asking the question because Cole Palmer is amazing. I love watching Cole Palmer play. I think he's really funny as well. Like I love watching his interviews. He's just like he's hilarious. I want to interview him a lot. Actually, I'm going to ask for that next season. But he's funny, and I think he's incredible. And I think his potential and ceiling is really high. And if I think the structure can be better at Chelsea, I do think he'll really shine and be successful there. Declan Rice is an obvious one. McAllister is one, I think, who's been not underrated, but underappreciated because he does a lot of like the graft in that Liverpool side. And I think if Liverpool do go on to be successful with his current squad, a lot of it will come down to him. There's so many. This is a bit of a random one, but I love Doku at Man City. I know he's not played, like he doesn't even start all the games, but I think, did he come in last summer? Yeah.
Came in the summer, yeah.
Yeah, I think he'll be unreal. Maybe not this season. He definitely wouldn't be the signing of this season. But I think in maybe a couple of seasons' time, he'll be like one of the key figures for them. There's a lot of good ones. I think this summer's going to be boring, by the way, in comparison, because teams are scared to spend money. Teams do not want any breaches. So I think it will be relatively quiet in terms of that. But yeah, Declan Rice, if I was probably pushed on it, would be the one for me.
Kweku, where do you stand on the signing of the season? You mentioned Declan.
Yeah, Declan Rice. It's interesting with Declan Rice, though, right? Because Arsenal are probably going to end up on 89 points this season. You got to 84 points last year, so he's effectively added 5 more points. And if Arsenal were to have won the league or go on to win, you could still win the league. West Ham might do a job on Man City. Then I'll definitely say Declan Rice. But it has to be Cole Palmer pound for pound. You lot spent 100 mil on Declan Rice, and he's come in, he's been incredible. And I said I want him at Chelsea. I wanted him at Chelsea, and I would have spent the money. You probably could give West Ham an extra 50 million and still be worth it. But Cole Palmer, when he came in, there wasn't too much expectation. We know how much Chelsea spent on other players. Caicedo came in for over 100 million after a bidding war with Liverpool. There's players that came in with a lot more fanfare in Nkunku, Nicholas Jackson to an extent. But Cole Palmer was a player that didn't start a Premier League game until the beginning of October. He's on 21 Premier League goals and 10 assists. The output has been ridiculous, and I expect that to come down next season. But he's already shown that he's one of the most exciting young players in this country. And it was quite telling when Reece James was interviewed after the win against Nottingham Forest he was asked about Cole Palmer. He said that on this day, he's one of the best players in the world. And that's high praise for Reece James, who I think on his day is one of the best right backs in the world. So he knows what quality is. And I think Cole Palmer can go on to achieve anything. The unfortunate thing for him this season is that Chelsea haven't been up to scratch, and he's been dragging Chelsea. You saw it in the hat-tricks that he scored in consecutive games, both against Manchester United and Everton, that he's a player that can give you everything you need, whether it's his aerial ability or his ability with both feet. I really, really like him, and I'm envious of you, Harriet, that you will probably get to interview him next season, because he's got something about him that I will say je ne sais quoi, but there's something a bit different about Cole Palmer, and I can see him being a player that a lot of fans latch onto, especially young Chelsea fans, because he is a little bit different to other players. He's got a bit of a different mentality, and when you see him on the ball and see the way that he plays football, it's a sight to behold, and I'm very, very excited to see him play tonight for Chelsea against Brighton.
Yeah, it's, Cole Palmer, he's given... When we were in our dark moment, things weren't going well. The club was in transition. Saka, and I would say Emile Smith Rowe to some extent, but Saka really gave us something to hope for. He gave us something to cheer about. He put the shoulders on his club, on the club on his shoulders. He's been incredible, really. And Cole Palmer, to me, has given you guys in your darkest days a little bit of that, wow, we've got something to wrap our arms around. And he's just a really cool customer. I enjoy playing him. I mean, of course, I'm not a fan of Chelsea, but I really enjoy watching him play. And I mean, he's got to make the Euros team, right? I mean, that would be absolutely insane I say this because it's Gareth Southgate, but it would be insane if he wasn't selected. Yeah, crazy. All right, I'll get you guys out on this one. Where is it? Of course, there's still one game. Well, player of the season is different to signing of the season. Do you think Odegaard's been the player of the season in the league?
It's difficult not to say Foden, is what I will say. I think, I think Foden's been unreal, but I do think Odegaard and Foden are like the two for me. I know Carragher and Neville did theirs, didn't they? And they gave, I think one said Odegaard and the other said Foden, and I think they're both like totally valid answers. I'm trying to think who else, because I feel like a Man City player is like obvious. I know fans were fuming, weren't they, because Rodri wasn't included in the team of the season, and you take Rodri out that Man City team and it's a different side. But it's just like sometimes the more like flashy, exciting players are the ones that win these kind of awards, aren't they? It's just how it works.
Yeah, it's amazing how many goals, Saka and assists he has too, and he's never kind of, I don't know, respectfully in the conversation. He's part of it, but he's never there. And the differences between Foden and Saka aren't that great. But Kweku, real quick before I get to my last question with you guys, who's your player of the season?
There's multiple contenders. I absolutely love Martin Odegaard, so I'll probably have him. But in terms of mentioning some other names, Ollie Watkins, leading the Premier League in assists, 13 assists, got 19 goals, and his team achieved something that they haven't achieved in a long, long time. So you've got to name him as one of the contenders. And a Liverpool player, he maybe hasn't had the fanfare in recent weeks, but what Virgil van Dijk has done for Liverpool and the form that he's returned to with the players around him deserves so much credit. I saw Liverpool take on Man City, and they had Kelleher in goal. They had Joe Gomez at left back, Conor Bradley at right back, and Jarell Quansah next to Virgil van Dijk. And they managed to keep Erling Haaland quiet for 90 minutes. And that's I'm not casting aspersions on the players around him, but Virgil van Dijk holding Liverpool down during some difficult moments this season deserves a lot of credit and a lot of consideration when it comes to player of the season.
I can't believe I didn't say Virgil van Dijk.
Oh, listen to you two. Let me just my rebuttal. Don't worry, guys. I've got this one. How about holding everyone down all season long? The best defense in the Premier League. And let me just tell you, these guys, iconic, absolutely iconic. And these two, the best centre-back pairing in all of Europe. How you can say Virgil van Dijk over any of these two, especially Saliba, I can't have it here. I won't have it here.
Whoa. I don't know about that. I do not know about that.
Bring it. Let's go.
Hour.
Yeah,
I love it.
I do think that Saliba's compared to Van Dijk. People are, oh, he can be the next Van Dijk, and there's a reason why Van Dijk is the standard, because for my eye, he's the best centre back I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, he's quality. He's great. I was, after he made that comment and Klopp was leaving, I was like, we should really put in a cheeky bid for Virgil van Dijk for next season. That would be amazing to have him in our team. Sorry, Harriet. Okay, guys, tell me something. Will there be a twist on the final day?
No.
Is there any hope whatsoever? I know the answer to this, but go on, Harriet.
I'll finish on a personal little story, and that was when I was at Anfield for the final game of the season when City were playing Villa. We were playing Wolves. Yeah, it was Wolves. It's always Wolves. And the title was on the line. And if they dropped points and we won our game, we won the league. And City obviously went 2-0 down. And the noise in Anfield that day, oh my God. Salah scores. At this point, by the way, I think City had already equalised. By the way, I've never watched that game back, never seen the highlights of that City Villa game, never intend to, never want to watch it. City had already equalised 2-2, I think, by this point, and Salah scores and he thinks he's won the league. And it was like, I can't even tell you the feeling of knowing in the stands that it's not enough. And the Wolves fans cheering every time City score, and the way that final day gets you when there's something on the line is horrible. But Manchester City are inevitable. They are just inevitable. And I do not see a way that team, having done it 3 times in a row, will have any lapse in mentality, concentration, performance to not make it 4 in a row. And I'm sorry, but that's, I think,
no, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. Listen, I'm just happy we're back here. I know that sounds like someone say, oh, shut up. You don't want to win trophies. Of course I want to win trophies, but let's be honest. We haven't been in this position in the league until the last 2 years. And to be here and relevant and take them, Kweku, right to the last game is unbelievable in terms of our progression. We were a broken football club with no culture. We had nothing. And we're back. There's no doubt about that. And we only have ourselves to blame. You can only have yourselves to blame. I'm not blaming Tottenham. I'm not blaming anyone else. I'm blaming, the results of the games I mentioned earlier. Is there a twist? Regardless of all that, is there a twist?
There could be. There could be. City are the masters of taking titles to the final day. 2012, we remember the Aguero moment. There was drama in that game. City were very close to not winning the title. In 2014, it went to the last day of the season. Less drama, less jeopardy in that one. It was them head-to-head against Liverpool, but they kind of knew they were going to win it. It went to a final day in 2019 as well. They went behind against Brighton, again going head-to-head against Liverpool, who got to 97 points. And in 2022, they were 2-0 down against Aston Villa and managed to bring it back. We remember Gundogan scoring the winner. City do make it dramatic on the final day. There is going to be a point in my mind where Arsenal maybe go ahead before City go ahead. And the point when you look at that Premier League table and Arsenal are champions, it's whether City can. I think City will beat West Ham, but there'll be some jeopardy in that game, and there'll be some twists and turns because City always make it dramatic, but inevitably they do get the job done. But don't lose hope, Soph. Don't lose hope. West Ham in David Moyes' final game will want to go out and make a mark in this season that's been disappointing overall. And I think there will be a twist in terms of there being drama on the final day, but I do think ultimately City will end up winning the Premier League title, unfortunately for Arsenal fans.
Yeah. You guys have been phenomenal, and you guys have to follow Harriet and Kweku. They're brilliant. I love them. I adore them both. I met them when we did the Sky transfer deadline day a couple of years ago, and I think they're 2 of the best young broadcasters up and coming in the UK. You can follow Harriet here and you can follow Kweku here as well. Did you guys want Arsenal to win the league, or did you want City?
That's a silly question. I could not stomach Arsenal winning the league. I know too many Arsenal fans. And that's the beauty of football, right? I know for the good of the Premier League, Arsenal should probably win it. I think a team winning it 4 times in a row, it doesn't scream meritocracy. It doesn't scream fairness, really, especially with these 115 charges dangling over their head. But as a football fan that supports Chelsea, that knows way too many Arsenal fans, I'm delighted that Arsenal probably aren't going to win this Premier League title. Sorry, Soph.
Yeah.
I wanted Liverpool to win it. So let's just start there. Because up until about 3 weeks ago, I thought it was a real possibility. So that's been heartbreaking. But anyway, moving on from the personal story, I This is going to sound so bad, but I feel like City winning it again is just like, it's fine. Like, it's inevitable. Everyone's fine with it. Like, when it's a new team, you like get jealous of all their hype and excitement. Whereas when it's City again, you're like, oh, are they even that excited anymore? Like, do they even cheer when they win again? Obviously they do, and I know that. And sorry, I'm going to do a massive name drop now, but I had the pleasure and honor, and it was an honor, of interviewing Pep earlier in the season, Guardiola, and I said to him, like, why does that fire still burn on you that you've won everything now? You won the Champions League, which was the big sticking point. And he just said, it's addictive. He looked me in the eye. I've never, like, the intensity. He said, winning is so addictive. And you can see that in him and his squad. And that is just why I think it's just inevitable. But as fans, you're just like, we've seen this before and it's okay. And we'll all heal from it. Whereas I think if it was Arsenal, everyone would be like, ah! They'd lose their minds.
I understand that part. Familiarity breeds comfort, and the addiction is,
it's true.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think Arsenal needed to win a domestic trophy this year, and why I was very upset that we didn't take the League Cup and FA Cup more seriously. You know, you got to start somewhere, and I think a domestic trophy would have helped us in getting a taste of what it is like to win. And because this team was not around mostly when we won the FA Cup, when Arteta first joined. Right. Do you want to tell anyone about any work you've got coming up, any shows, anything? Kweku, what have you got rolling?
Just same old. I work quite extensively with TalkSport. I'm on the Friday show on TalkSport 2 at The Social, normally alongside Harry Simiyu, a fellow Arsenal fan.
He was on last night. We love Harry.
Yeah, Harry's an absolute legend. But got Bromley got promoted, and they did an experiment with Football Manager, and so I look out for the documentary that's coming out next week. I'm featured in it. That explores the tactician's journey as Bromley's member of staff in terms of the backroom staff. So you'll see a familiar face in there. And yeah, same old stuff. Hopefully the Sky Sports transfer show is back in the summer, so you'll see me on your screens there as well.
Brilliant. And Harriet, are you looking forward to some time off once the season ends? What have you got rolling?
Catch me on a plane somewhere hot for most of the I will be taking a lot of sleep and a big rest, because it's been a long, rewarding, exciting, and at some points tiring season. So yeah, a little rest and then get ready to go again as soon as the pre-seasons, the transfers and everything rolls around. But a quiet June, that's for sure.
Okay, well, brilliant stuff. You've both done a tremendous job this season. I'm excited to continue witnessing your broadcasting journeys, and I'm sure you'll promise me you'll come back next season for more football talk.
Of course.
100%.
Okay, awesome. Squaddies, at ease. Tomorrow night, we've got a special show to mark the 20th anniversary of the Invincibles. It would have been great if we'd have won it 20 years later, but apparently that's not going to happen. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks to everyone for joining. Thanks to these two at ease, Squaddies. And as Super Kev says, don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. Good night.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
And 3,